Okay, let's
So for now, let's go maybe through a topic that some of the newer generation or people that weren't involved at the time don't maybe know. So a lot of questions usually arise, at least in my part of the world. What about the judging system? Is it fair? How does it work? So on the World Championship, we're going to use the O.U.R system. So can you maybe just tell us a little bit more about it and where it came from, why it became, and how it was used?
Okay.
So
yeah. So where it came from, I guess it first started as a concept in 1999, right? I was my mother had a banquet hall business, and it was going under. She didn't know anything about business, and she just decided to open one up. And she was kind of like, we need to do something. So can you figure out something to do? And the only thing I knew at that time was breaking, right? But we've never, during that time in 99, I've never been to a breaking competition. There were no competitions. Breaking was always in the ciphers and the circles. And so I was like, okay, the only thing I know is breaking, so maybe I can do an amateur breaking competition, right? Like an amateur battle. And so I asked my crew member, can you find 8 people? He said, yes, or 8 crews. He found 8 crews like in a very short amount of time. And I was like, wow, okay, I guess we're really doing this. But then it came up to the question is, how are we going to judge this, right? And during this time, it was kind of like a big war in breaking, right? Like we had rivals who we would, battle all the time, and we'd fight like sometimes over like breaking, right? Like like sometimes literally fight over breaking. And one of the things that would always happen is they would always say to us, you're not a b-boy, because you don't have the foundation. So they always kept saying foundation. And we said, you guys are like just want to be New York people, like New York breakers. You're like you're just on their jock. You're not original, right? So our thing was, you're not original. Their thing is, we don't have foundation. And then there was another group of guys who only did power moves and crazy moves, and they always said, everything you do is easy. You guys have no difficulty. It's easy, right? Which we now call dynamics, right? And so we were saying, how are we going to judge this? Because if we just have some people sitting on the panel and just say, oh, I think they won or they won, everyone's going to revolt, right? Because back then people weren't as nice about these kind of things, right? And so we kept talking about it. And then finally we said, hey, this is the only way that it would be fair, right? Let's have one person that they respect, the foundation guys respect for foundation. We'll get someone that they respect, and they will judge who has better foundation, because foundation was such a big topic. And then we'll get someone that we respect for originality, and all they're going to say is who was more original. And then those power moving guys and the blow up guys, we're going to have someone that they respect for blow ups, and they're going to say who had better blow ups and difficulty and whatnot, right? And then whoever wins 2 out of the 3 judges should be the winner. And we were like, everyone's like, yeah, that's fair, because we wanted to make it fair. The key word is fair. I don't think there's another system out there that prioritized fairness, right? Like said, hey, we want this to be fair for everybody, right? So that's how the concept first started. But then we said, hey, there's something missing, right? Like, like even though you have these 3 judges, what's missing? So we said execution, right? Like actually hitting your stuff, not crashing, not falling out. And this is during a time where execution wasn't even a thing, right? Like no one really talked about it. We said, but everything else has execution, so we should add that, right? And then we added those 4, but there was still something missing. And we were like, what is that? And we're like, well, when we battle, there's the conversation. Like that's like the obvious thing. It's like, you do this, I have a better reply. Like I can do that better than you. And so we added that last element, the Cypher element. Or back then we called it battle strategy. We didn't know what word to call it. And then now because we've lost the whole essence of the Cypher about how it's about the conversation. So now we call it the Cypher category, or the Cypher dimension, right? So that's basically how it started, right? With the idea that there are different types of mentalities in breaking, different types of judges. Each judge weights what they like, has a different weighting. And to make it fair, we get one of those 5 different types of approaches to breaking, and get one person to represent each of those, someone who's respected in each of those, and their job is to say, who won that, and then the winner, to make it fair, is the one who wins the majority of those 5. And that's basically how it started. Yeah.
Nice, nice. So basically you wanted to make it fair for everyone joining, right?
Exactly.
And how did from that fairness come to a stage like R16?
I started to host battles every month, right? Like every month there was always a battle. And I knew from the very beginning, being an organizer, that, hey, if these people don't think it's fair, they're not going to come back, right? That was the main thing that I thought. They're going to think, if they think it's not fair, they just will stop coming, they'll stop entering. So I would do it every month, and nobody complained, because they were like, yeah, it makes sense. Okay, I lost originality. We respect that guy for originality. Or I lost everything, but I won in foundation. That's the only thing that I care about anyway. So whatever, right? So nobody thought that it was unfair. And during this time, competitions weren't big, right? Like all over the place. So no one saw how everyone was judging. So this was like the accepted way. So I started talking about about how the system works, and I started bringing it to different, what you call it again, like as I was judging, I was talking about it to a lot of people, and then we started, Cross One, for example, brought me out to try the system at this event. And that was the first time that I found out that even though someone's judging on one category, they can still be a bad judge, because this one guy clearly, the other team won execution, and then that person just gave his friend a high score and gave that person a low score. You know what I mean? So you clearly saw the biasness, right? But now looking back, I realized that that's the beauty of the system, is that you can actually see if someone is being fully biased or not. Where if without a system, you can hide behind
behind hands,
behind your hand, saying just my opinion, right? And so that was so the system started to grow from there. I started trying to add more things and start changing the words and terminology. And then what happened is I started saying, okay, you know what? If people started talking about the system a lot, and I said, hey, if I'm going to use this system to try to make things more fair, because I saw the problems all out there and people arguing and fighting over judging. And I said, but in Toronto, we don't really argue like this, right? We're not arguing because it's as fair as possible. So I was like, okay, if I'm going to bring this system out there to the world and help fix judging, because I was a judge too, right? I was judging all the competitions, and I didn't want people would ask me, why did I lose? And I can actually show them this is why, but no one else did, right? It was a funny story. These guys came up to me and go, Dyzee, why did we lose? And I took out the paper and I was like, well, this is exactly what happened, and this is why, right? And this is how I judge. And then they were like, okay. And they asked the other guy, so why do we lose? And the guy was like, well, and they're like, that's it, we call you out right now. And they started going like this. It was so funny, right? And I was like, oh my gosh. And they were battling him super hard. I'm just walking back slowly, whew, right? And so it was when I went to, so I started seeing breaking starting to grow, and it started big competitions blowing up all over the place. And then I went to Korea for R16 in 2007, and that was the dream. I was like, whoa, I was competing, and it was beautiful, it was huge, there was people cheering and everything was nice. And then 2008, it was my friends who were organizing R16, and my friend, after the event, I was talking with him, and he said, you know what, I don't think this is gonna last. And I was like, what do you mean? Breaking so big in Korea, it's huge, it's on TV. He goes, yeah, it is. And he goes, but there's no real connection from the fans to the dancers, to the breakers, the same. And I'm like, what do you mean there's no connection? They're not happy? And he's like, no, they're happy. Yeah, you win, they cheer and everything, but not a real connection like in baseball, where they're like, okay, come on, you can do this. They're just watching and they're cheering for the winner, but that's it.
It's a show.
It's a show. It's not they don't have this real diehard connection. And I was like, well, I have a system, you know what I mean, Dad? And so we started talking about it, and then he's like, yo, maybe this might be the real way. And so I started thinking, okay, well, for a lot of people who don't know how the system works, each judge gives a score from 1 to 5 every round, right? 5 being the best, obviously, 1 being the worst. A 0 if they do something wrong, like push or slap or spit in the person's face or something that's not allowed, right? You get a 0 for that, right? And so I was like, here I presented to him the system, and he said, okay, let's bring it to R16. We need this, right? And so that's basically how it got to R16. And then from I started like telling, but since R16 was such a gigantic event, right? I realized that if the system gets over there, there's going to be a lot of people going, what is this, right? So I needed to like start, and first I need to get permission, right, to do this from like the OGs, from New York, right? Because this is where it came from. So I literally went to New York, met with as many people as I could, all the OGs, explained the system, the heart behind what I'm trying to do, how I'm trying to take breaking to another, to become professional, to preserve the culture, preserve these 5 things that these 5 dimensions in breaking are not something that's just made up. It's not like I'm like, well, I think breaking should have this criteria, like dramaturgy or something, or performativity. Like as long as I've been breaking, back in the days, I never heard someone say, yo, you whack because you ain't got no performativity. What's your dramaturgy, son? Like I never heard anyone say it to me. So that's the reason why the criteria wasn't there. But these 5 criterias, right? Of like, like I've seen people like, this is like, it's by observing breaking and seeing what's the values of the culture, and then preserving those values that they'll never be lost. Because eventually if people forget about originality, then is breaking getting better if we lose the value of originality, or if we lose the value of foundation, of what is foundation, and people no longer value it and it's gone, are we actually getting better as a culture? So I wanted to preserve those. I believe that we have to preserve those things. And then when we're going to R16, I knew that people were going to ask a lot of questions. They're going to say, why are we having this thing? And so that's the reason why I moved to Korea and said, okay, if I'm going to do this right and launch this, I have to really work on getting this to the community and explaining everything. And so that's basically how it evolved and got into R16.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. It has a wholehearted story behind it, actually, connected with people. And so what would you say to a person starting with our system? Let's go maybe first with foundation. What is a foundational aspect of viewing a dancer? B-boy, B-girl.
Okay, so I would say foundation is like the more traditional approach to, like the tradition. It represents like where our culture came from, and what makes the breaking what it is, right? Like why is it different? What separates it, right? And so there are like four components to foundation, right? The first one is just like the foundation of a B-boy or a B-girl is the flavor, but the question is what kind of flavor, right? The flavor of 100% confidence, of that aggressive attitude, that because it's not like scared flavor or like sexy flavor, like it's not that, right? It's like, it's like the B-boy flavor, right? So that's the first thing, whether you have it or you're not, or you don't. And then the next one would be the formula, right? And these are what the OGs agreed, because like I was saying, for me to have dreaming to release this system into the culture, I needed to first know what foundation means. So I went out there and I just started saying, what is foundation? I started asking all the OGs. Every time I traveled and I met with OGs, I would ask them questions. And OGs, they love to talk. They love to talk about stuff, about past and stories and whatnot. And all my friends were like, guys, don't stop egging him on, right? Like, but I legitimately wanted to know, like, what is foundation? Because I hear people saying foundation this, foundation that, but what is it? And so I collected all their opinions and then tried to, with reason, put them together and say, okay, and narrow it down to those 4 components. The B-boy flavor. The second one that they all agree on is the B-boy formula, right?
What is a B-boy formula?
So the formula is kind of like the rules of breaking, of what you're supposed to do is 1, you dance on top. 2, you dance on the floor. And 3, you freeze. That's what makes breaking unique. And that's the formula they've always followed, right? That you have those 3 things: dancing on top, dancing on the floor, and freeze. It's either you have it or you don't. That's pretty black and white, right? And so that has to be preserved, because if you only top rock, it's not really breaking. But if you only just go to the floor and do footwork, and you don't freeze, you don't top rock, then you're missing the foundation of what it is. Now, the third one that they all agree on is how you approach the music, how you dance to the music, right? The only difference that they don't agree on is how you're supposed to dance to the music. So then that's broken down into like 3 types of approaches, which is the Bronx way, which is being funky, sporadic, lots of energy to the music. The second way is probably the most famous right now, which is the Brooklyn way, which is really dissecting the song, like really like 100% musicality, almost like breaking karaoke. You know what I mean? Like with the physical karaoke, like, you know, like hitting the beats, everything has to be perfectly timed, that you can only move when the beat says so, right? And the third one is the flow, the suave, the finesse, the lightness, you know, all of those with the flavor at the same time, right? So we have three components so far, and the fourth component of foundation is the vocabulary, right? Meaning you need to have a wide variety of vocabulary, different steps, different you know, patterns and all that kind of stuff, right? Otherwise, if you're just doing the exact same thing over and over and over, then your foundation is limited to just a few steps. So vocabulary is knowing how to do different types of steps when you're freestyling.
So when I started with our system and studying our system, there was no vocabulary in it.
Yes.
And I think this is probably a perfect opportunity to explain how the system evolves through time.
Yes.
With new knowledge, new inputs, the scene changes maybe, and maybe if you can tell us more about that.
Yeah, so in the beginning, it was only the flavor and the musical approach, right? And then, and as I speak with OGs and I show them this, because I want to get their input on it, right? So for example, Easy Rock was the one who added the formula, right? And so as I showed him he said, this makes sense, but the formula should be in there, right? And I was like, that's true. And so I added the formula in there. I asked him to explain it. Then all the other OGs, I said, hey, the formula was added, and they said, yeah, that makes sense, right? Like it should be in there. And that's how formula got added. And then what got added later was vocabulary, and that was by track too. Because as I told him the different ones in there, the three components, he said, vocabulary's got to be in there too. You have to have a vocabulary to have good foundation, right? And I said, well, that makes sense. And so it took a while, but I went around and I asked people, should vocabulary be added? Some OGs, and they all agreed, yeah, it makes sense that it should be added. And that's basically how it evolves. Yeah.
Nice. So after foundation, you spoke about originality, the aspect that your crew was strong in.
Yes.
How would you define the originality aspect for B-boys and B-girls?
Well, this is a difficult one because originality is more about like your creativity, right? And so I want to judge this fairly, right? It had to be, you know, it has to be something that's objective, because the O.U.R system stands for objective, unified, meaning the 5 perspectives are unified together, right? And R is for real time, meaning people should be able to see in real time what's happening, like who's winning, like full transparency, right? In real time. That's O.U.R, right? And so I want to take that same values and add it to originality. So I realized that, like, you know, most people think like, oh, I think this is beautiful, and I think someone else thinks this is beautiful. That's subjective. That's in the eyes of the beholder. But my wife is actually, she's an artist. She graduated from university for art, and has a degree in art, and is also an art teacher. And she helped me gain insights on how art is judged, right? And so art is actually judged by quantity. So someone who's more creative will make more things, like will create more things. But in the O.U.R system, of course you need creativity to do it, but there are 5 components that you're looking for in originality, right? The first one is having your own original moves, your signature moves, right? Everyone knows that, but that's very hard to do, right? The second one is having your own signature character or persona, like your own, you know, way of mannerisms, acting, like just, you know, having your own individual way of feeling, right? The third way is having your own original style, right? So style is actually now broken down into the movements so for example, my style would be twirly legs and I, you know, back in the 90s, everyone had their own style. They were focused on only using moves that created a style. It's similar to Kung Fu. You have, you know, tiger style, you have drunken style, you have dragon style, right? You have the crane eagle style, right? And the same thing with breaking. They adopted that mentality in the 90s to have your own style. And the last one is the last component of originality is your own, well, not the last, but the fourth last is having your own concepts and themes. So creating themes and concepts, right? And so that's what a judge will be looking at. And then the last one would be, you know, part of the component is doing something new every round or doing something fresh, because I can't do something super original, right? And then score a perfect score going, whoa, that was a very original round, and then go out and do the exact same thing, right? Then how can you score that, right? So you should be doing something new every round. And those are the 5 components of originality.
So would you say that originality also evolved through time like foundation, or how did it evolve in the short version?
I would say like before it was just based on quantity, right? And then you realize that like, how can we keep how can that be scored like that? It has to be something where you're looking, because how do you say there's quantity, but then how do you judge one very original move versus a concept, right? Like, like when, there'd be in hierarchy. So they all have to be the same level. And that's the reason why you said, okay, what can be made original? And then the first thing was like, of course, original moves. And then another thing was your own style. Later, the third one was like, then we said, okay, you can have your own concepts. And then we said, oh, character is also original, right? Like, when you see certain people and they have their own character, even though their moves are like foundational or normal, but their character makes them unique. So character was added in there, right? And then the whole thing about, well, what if you do the same thing every round? So that's the reason why something fresh, the fresh component, doing something new every round, was added in.
Nice. So from originality, let's go to dynamics. The guys that do the crazy stuff.
Yeah.
How did you solve, or how would you explain the whole dynamics aspect to the b-boys?
So originally, dynamics was named difficulty, right? And then it changed to technique, right? Then technique was kind of ambiguous, so then it went to something where everyone started talking about dynamic moves versus dynamic style, right? And so that's the reason why dynamics was the one that took over, right? Because dynamic means like the flashy, crazy stuff, right? But it's really about like what's difficult or not, what the normal audience would see. Well, that's very difficult to do. But the problem is that difficulty is in the eye of the beholder. What's easy for one breaker might be difficult for someone else. So how do you measure what's difficult? And so it was boiled down. It started to be boiled down to collect the 7 dynamic qualities, right? That the judge only has to see if those dynamic qualities were clearly there or not, right? So the 7 dynamic qualities was strength, right? Like Junior, or Cujo, right? Like that have like when people see, oh, that's some insane strength. So strength, and then you have speed. When someone's like super fast, which was when I was young, that was my thing, is to be so fast that people were like, what's going on, right? So strength, speed. When someone does super fast windmills, someone does regular windmills, you're like, whatever. But if it's super fast, wow. Strength, speed. Then there's balance, right? That's someone like physics, who's like holding like, like balancing like insane. Strength, speed, balance. Then there's explosive, which was or explosive energy. That's someone who's like all of a sudden they change directions really quickly or whatever. That's like Negin, or who else would you say is someone like that?
Explosive. Yeah. I mean machine.
Machine, of course. Like, yeah, machine. Like they're very explosive. So strength, speed, balance, explosive. And then you have people who do something that's like not necessarily explosive, but dangerous. Like really dangerous. Like, oh my gosh, that hurts.
Well, you have one of those guys, Monkey King.
Yeah. Like, like, oh my God, you can break your bones. Like that's dangerous. So that's risk, like risk of injury. It used to be called dangerous, but now it's like you say risk, right? Because
just to be open to the audience, that doesn't mean that they actually hurt themselves, right?
Yeah.
It's just the visual aspects that looks risky.
Yeah, it looks risky. Like, whoa, that's risky. Because risky could be anything. It could be like a really crazy flip. It could be something where someone's diving over somebody doing a head spin while there's make a hole with their legs, and they, that's dangerous, right? Like, And then there's also like doing things on the back of your wrist or on your elbow where you're like, that's gonna hurt, right? So that's the risk. And then the next one, the 6th one, is flexibility, right? Like being contortions and bending your body, where everyone's like similar to risk, right? But it's it's about like
rubber.
Yeah, like someone like Rubber Legs or Lilu Benji, all those abstract guys who bend in weird positions, and you're like, whoa, like what's going on? And then the last one was it used to be split into 2. It was complexity or illusions, but then it kind of joined together and then became under the term magical, something that you just can't really explain. And you're like, what was that? Like if they do something that was like an illusion, that you're like, what happened, right? I mean, rewind that, right? Like, and yeah, that's also under dynamics, because it can also be something that's like a flashy, right? Even though it's not physically difficult, but visually it's flashy, right? So yeah, those are the 7. Yeah, that's the dynamics.
Nice. So from then on, you said that after the 3, they came the 2 extra. One was execution. Can you maybe elaborate more on execution?
Yeah. So what? Like I said, like when I was younger, execution wasn't part of the thing. If you crashed, you didn't lose. But as braking and judging started to evolve and get, there were certain people, I would say like Po1 and even DJ Renegade, like they were talking a lot about execution because I think at that time they wanted to make, the people were fighting with each other over what's the right way. They had the foundation guys, the originality guys, the blow up guys. And so there were people like Po1 who would say, you know what, it doesn't matter what style you do, as long as you execute, right? So execution got cemented as a very important part of braking, right? But then the question is, what is execution, right? And so I went out and I collected as many people's thoughts on execution. And I came up with there's actually 5 types of execution things to execute. If you want to be a perfect in execution, you should execute 5 things. 1, you got to execute your moves, not just that doesn't mean not crashing, but actually sticking your moves and holding it, right? 2 is having a clean, smooth style, like with good form, sharp, like your style's got to be like perfection. The 3rd one, your confidence, right? Like, losing your confidence is a no-no, right? Don't lose your confidence. Actually, did I say 5? I think there's 4, right? And the last one is you need to execute something new every round. You can't be doing the same thing.
Vocabulary, actually. Yeah.
So it's vocabulary, but in a different way because, yeah.
So some people might ask, there is vocabulary in foundation, there's vocabulary in originality and also in execution.
Yes.
So vocabulary is really important in ways of braking, right?
Of course, and even confidence, right? Because confidence is in multiple categories. Some things do overlap, and that's totally fine because, yeah, there's certain values that are going to be across the board for sure. Yeah.
From my perspective, when I was watching the O.U.R system, is that it's not that just they overlap; they also connect with the dimension that they're in.
Yes.
Right. That's why they're also in the other dimensions.
Yes.
Because watching vocabulary in dynamics has, originality has a different meaning than in execution, right?
Exactly. That's correct. Yeah.
So after the execution, you also mentioned in the beginnings battle, later on known as Cypher. Can you please also tell us more about this one?
It was originally called strategy, but then people said, hey, I have my own strategy and they have their own strategy. So I realized strategy is not the right word. So we changed it to battle, right? Because what you're supposed to do in a battle. But a lot of people said, hey, battle is such a common word, right? And so we realized, so it took a while for us to realize that the word cipher is probably the best word because we've lost some people now think a cipher means a qualifier, but it's not, right? Like a cipher, and then some people think that dancing in a circle means you're ciphering, but it's not. A cipher, actually, the term came from rappers, where the rap MCs would make a circle, and then they would go off each other. Like it's kind of like testing your skills. It's kind of sparring, right? And to spar in a rap cipher meant if I talked about a specific thing, you'd have to take what I said, and you'd have to like use that in your rhyme, right? So breaking had that same philosophy, right? Where if you were doing head spins, I would have to reach into my arsenal and come up with a good reply for, I can head spin too, but I do a head spin in lotus, right? And just one shot into a lotus flare. And then someone would say, oh, I can do a lotus invert, right? And so the whole cipher aspect is your ability to take what other people do and reply to that. And if you do have a perfect answer, you score higher, right? Now another thing, and then if you at least match them, then you score lower. But if you don't answer at all, you're not really ciphering, right? You're just performing, right? So that's basically how it works. And back in the day, this is how breaking used to always be. It used to always be exactly like that, where the power move guy, you send your power move guy in. Yeah. Top rock guy, get in there, right? So we want to preserve that because that's what made breaking amazing.
So what would you say in a short form is cipher aspect for the b-boys and b-girls to learn?
Ciphering is 2 things. 1 is the goal to remove your opponent's confidence in whichever way. If you remove their confidence, you're already winning the cipher. Second one is if they don't remove their confidence, is you need to is the easiest way to show you're better than somebody is to take exactly what they do and show you can do it better, or show that you have an answer for that, right? And so that's basically what the cipher is you're getting points by scoring by whatever point they're trying to make. You steal that point away from them, basically.
Yeah, nice. So from all of the aspects, dimensions, pardon, do you have any stories that you would share with us that throughout your research, throughout the questions to the community, what stick in your heart and in your progress? A communication with some b-boy, a certain situation in a battle. Do you have anything that you would maybe share with us that would give us more connection to our system?
I would say the biggest story that I have about the system is that is the success of my crew, Supernaturals, throughout the years of all the battles that we won as a crew, and all the other crews that followed it, right? So basically, 2001 to 2003, my crew, Supernaturals, was we just came out into the breaking scene, and we were like, we took the world by storm with our style, and we were doing. I mean, this is like this is 2001, so there wasn't as big, but this is through America, and we were winning a lot of battles. But by 2004, people kind of caught on to what we were doing a bit, and we weren't winning battles anymore. And I was like, why aren't we winning any more battles? Like this is like we're doing the same thing. I think we win, but we're losing. And so 2006, I'm like, my crew kind of was like arguing with each other, and we were like, it's kind of split up. And then I went to Korea, and a friend of mine, who his crew wins all the battles, he told me that, he opened my mind. He said, breaking is not like what you think it is, like a real battle, but it's become like a sport, like a game. And to win a game, you have to know the rules, right? And so if you know the rules, you can, strategize and win. Right. And so he had a different way of doing things, but that really stuck to me. Right. And so his way was to find out what the judges think. Right. Which I think is a great idea. You should know what the judges are thinking. And if you can do what the judges are looking for, then you could win. And that's smart. The only difference is that his way was to kind of intimidate them, corner them, and force them to say what they're looking for, and then do exactly what they said, while looking at them saying, "Hey, you said," And I thought that was wrong, right? I don't think that's like that was for me that was kind of like a cheating way, right? Like it's kind of messed up. It was intelligent, but it still opened up my mind, and I said, "Hey, if we can cover all the things that judges are looking for, then we don't give them a reason to make us lose," because that's what he said. Don't give them a reason to make you lose. So, but the difference with me, was that I already knew what all the judges are looking at through the system that we were using, right? Because the idea behind the system is that all judges out there, right, can be broken down to those 5 dimensions, right? There's no an extra dimension that people are saying, well, like for example, like a sexy dimension, right? No one's saying, well, you lost because the other thing was more sexy, right? No one says that, right? But they always talk about those 5 things, like like he had more battle control, or he had better execution or whatever. So I went and I trained my crew to cover those 5 things, right? Like, and that was the beginning. And once we started breaking according to covering those 5 things, we started winning a lot of battles. Like we became undefeated. Like we won 99% of our battles.
Nice.
Like 99%. Like that's a really high,
Yeah.
like, like for me, losing was not an option. I did not want to lose. If I lost, it was a big deal to me, right? And after I retired, I started saying, my other friends who were other crews, I started teaching them. And every crew that I started teaching that really were serious about it, they went on to become the best in their country. They started winning everything. They became the best. So like Dynamic Rockers was one. If I was gonna, Team Schmeda, right? Acropom, right? Like I just shared it with so many people, like all throughout Asia. Dream Runners was a big one, and Dream Runners became the first crew to win not only all the battles in Taiwan, but they're the first crew to win an international battle outside of Taiwan, right? And so it was like so a big one for me too is some people were saying that our system helped them so much, like know what to do. Big one is Jinjo. Jinjo was a huge supporter of our system, and they followed it to a T, and then they became so good at battling. But the big one story that I remember was Morning of Owl.
Oh, Fiona's favorite.
Fiona's favorite. They never would make it past a qualifier. They always lost all the time. And one year at R16, they got the scores after losing, which they had a heartbreak that they lost. And they sat with me and they said, I want to know, what is foundation, right? Because I keep getting 0 and 1 in foundation. And so I explained foundation very clearly to them. And they were shocked. They were like, okay, that makes sense. Because they had actual direction of, they know what they had to do, right? And they were like, okay, so then what is originality, right? So I explained to them, this is originality, blah, blah, blah. And I told them exactly the O.U.R system, what is originality? And they're like shocked. So then, right, this was at a dinner. They're like, what's dynamics? And they're all huddled around me. And I'm like, well, dynamics, this is how you judge it according to these things. And they're like, what's execution? What's Cypher, right? Like, like what's the last one? And so their mind was blown. And so they're like, so how do you think we can do this, right? Like, and I was like, well, I can show you a strategy, but the system opened up a door for them to say what, like, to know what to be judged on, right? And after I went to the studio and I trained them in all the strategies of the Fates battle system. And 1 month later, they won Battle of the Year Korea,
Yeah.
right? Oh, actually, no, a week later, they won Jeonju Grand Prix when they've never won anything before. A week later, a month later, they won Battle of the Year Korea, right? And exactly 1 year later, they won R16 Korea, and that's what cemented and made history, right? Like, and so, and I've seen, and that's the biggest example of a crew that, wasn't doing well, but then all of a sudden became, but all the other crews I've seen, like, from SAS crew to Dream Runners to Dynamic Rockers, I've seen to see them take this knowledge, know what to work on, through the system, through the 5 dimensions, and the successes that they had. Like that was really like a dream of mine to, it's like so super fulfilling. Yeah.
Nice. So the dream doesn't stop right there, right? The dream goes on. So what would you say are plans or future plans for our system, for judging system under the BLOC?
Yeah. So under the BLOC, like the biggest dream would be to like do it. Well, I want to do things correctly and community minded, culturally minded, right? And so like the standards are meant to continually grow, and I don't want to, and even though I'm the one that took all the different components and from what it's not, I don't take the credit because I'm not the one who invented those things, right? It was the different OGs and people that created the dance, that the legends, the pioneers that added these values. And all I did was collect them into like and try to make sense of, how would you judge this objectively, right? But my goal is to create a chamber for each of those 5 dimensions, or a committee, right? A committee from 5 to 10, all different crews, all different teams or legacies, and have them add to it, like watch how breaking is going and saying, hey, we need to fix how to judge foundation and add an extra one or an extra component, and that's my dream, is to have that. And when you were like if you wanted to become a judge for the Olympics, you had to undergo like a lot of training and certification. You paid for like the Congress fee, you paid for the license, you paid for to get the certificate. Like, you spend like a lot of money, right? And so, but in my idea, the future would be like, as the people are getting certified, under the system, the certification fees that they pay would be shared and split amongst the OGs. And this is a way to give back to the people who did something for the culture. You know what I mean? Like that they'll actually have something, for life, right? And so that's the big plan, is to give back to the culture and the people who paved the way.
Nice. Nice. So any last words for the people coming to the World Championship this year in October and the conference?
Oh, and be ready for something new. You're gonna actually have a new, it's a new way of battling, but it's gonna be new to you, but it's something that's actually old, that's been done already in the past. Keep an open mind, and yeah, I can't wait to see you here at the finals.
Nice. Thank you, Dyzee. The red crab has spoken.